Gio covered this news yesterday, but the news is that Liverpool are interested in Tim Steidten. What has changed between yesterday and today? Well, I think just that some of the rumours have been confirmed. That makes it a little bit more, I think, solid as a rumour. Also, the fact that Michael Edwards, who is their former technical director, technical advisor, has refused the opportunity to go to Liverpool, as I understand it, as Paul Mitchell. So two of the biggest candidates to go to Liverpool as director of football have both turned down the job. I think if you put two and two together, you probably do get four on this one. And if we know that Tim Steidten is on Liverpool's and the Fenway Group's wanted list, then maybe this is something we can probably start to worry about on this one. Well, I say worry about it. I think we're about to find out how true a lot of these rumours are about Tim Steidten having, a sort of shaky working relationship with maybe David Moyes, which I don't completely believe, by the way. But I think what I'm more concerned about is possibly the autonomy that he is allowed by the club. And what I mean by that is how much governance is he allowed in terms of the director of football to sort of manage and dictate and direct all of our transfers in and out. Now, I think any time anyone gets approached by Liverpool, we're going to have an issue. Look, Gio said as much yesterday. Liverpool come in for Jared Bowen, we've got a problem. Liverpool come in for Mohamed Kudus, we've got a problem. And it's exactly the same. Liverpool come in for Tim Steidten, we do have a bit of a problem. But I do think it's a little bit different with a director of football, because ultimately what you're asking the director of football to do is to build the infrastructure of a club and be able to, I guess, unearth gems, unearth players, and make your transfer strategy and just your whole recruitment process successful. So I'm not entirely sure that it is based on the glory maybe that footballers are. You can understand a footballer wants to win the Champions League. He wants to play in that game. He wants to play in a final. I'm not entirely sure that's where a director of football gets their satisfaction from the medals, from the finals, from that sort of thing. Of course, you're going to want to be at a club that is successful. But I would imagine, and I don't know, this is just my thought process, that if I were a director of football, my job satisfaction would come from unearthing that unknown player, and then I guess ultimately the player wins the Ballon d'Or. That's your personal glory in that. That's your job satisfaction. So I think that plays a lot into it. So I do think there is a way that a club can keep hold of a director of football as long as a director of football is given the tools to do the job and buys into the project of that club. And this is where I think we may have the problem, not just because it's Liverpool, but because of the situation we might have at West Ham. Liverpool may well come in and say, look, Jurgen Klopp has gone, and he was going, isn't he? He was going to be the longest dying swan act you've ever seen. But that's what we're going to get now, and that's the situation we're in. But if what the Fenway Group, who own Liverpool, are going to say is, look, Tim, we'd like you to come in. You've got full autonomy here. You can oversee all buying and selling. You can recruit your own scouts. You can even have a hand in maybe identifying the next manager. Possibly, irrespective of the size of the two clubs, that just might be more attractive than what he has at West Ham. And I'm a little bit worried about the West Ham situation, and I'll give you a few examples here, which you're going to know, but I think when you string them all together, it doesn't sound particularly good. Our recruitment's been bad for quite some time, as you can see from the massive losses that we've taken throughout our history, but even recently, Sebastian Haller, Nikola Vlasic, to name but two. There are many, many more. We do have a habit of signing players, and they seem to, sort of drop off a cliff. Look, we're just about to do a deal, right? We signed Ben Rama for 25 million, 26 million, whatever it might have been. He's just about to be loaned out for, I think, something along the lines of €5 million loan fee. We just spent £17 million on Maxwell Cornet. Looks like he's going to be he's available as well. Big loss on there. £27 million on Pablo Fornals. Big loss on him. We lose money, we hemorrhage money. You get the point. I think the problem that we've got at the moment is Tim Steidten, I don't think, is fully allowed to do his job. So get to this transfer window. There is a budget there. We know there's a budget there. you would hope that Tim Steidten is allowed to spend that budget. The first signing that we brought in the summer window was James Ward-Prowse. That was a David Moyes signing. I think a lot of us were worried about that, thinking, well, hold on, we've got this new director of football coming in. When are his players going to come in? Well, his players did come in. If you could to believe the reports, and that is that Edson Alvarez, Mohamed Kudus, and of course Konstantinos Mavropanos were all Tim Steidten's picks, signings, then that's absolutely great. What I do think is you have to factor in is a lot of the stories that have been doing around since then. It's that actually that David Moyes rejects a lot of Tim Steidten's players. Now, I think that's probably normal anyway. I do think that's the general dynamic of possibly a head coach and a director of football relationship. But I think the wording of that's quite key, because I think David Moyes is not used to being a head coach, and that's really what he needs to be now. He's used to being a manager, and it's who has the autonomy, right? It's who has the final say. And I think that's an issue we may have here, because I don't just think there are two people contesting it. I think there are three people contesting it, because, of course, the other one is David Sullivan. So we get to this transfer window, and we've made one signing so far. It's a loan sign of Kalvin Phillips. I've heard a few people trying to frame this as a Tim Steidten signing. It just ain't. What a load of nonsense. I completely refute that. I absolutely disbelieve it. And, well, listen, you can believe what you want. I would assume there are a chunk of you watching this will probably agree with me on that. That I think is quite clear that that Kalvin Phillips is a David Moyes signing. So if we can just park that and assume that to be the case. So if we're going to assume that, I think we're pretty solid ground when we say that Ibrahim Osman is a Tim Steidten signing. Now, I do understand that there are some complexities with the agent situation. I covered that in the video earlier. But just forget all that for a moment. Just look at the situation. Tim Steidten recommends a player, we don't get him. David Moyes recommends a player, we do. I would find that quite difficult if I'd been brought in to oversee a situation and sort of almost revolutionise a club, which is really what we're asking Steidten to do here. I think at that point, as in any job, you'd be looking at it and thinking, well, I don't have the tools to do the job. You've brought me in to oversee things. You've brought me in to recruit players. The summer signings were big signings, I think with the exception of Mavropanos, maybe. I think, Stuttgart really struggled last season. Woods, a centre-back who was playing for a sort of relegation-threatened team last season, be one of the biggest names on the list of Europe? No, he wouldn't. But let's be fair, Kudus and Alvarez were both linked to pretty big teams and big clubs in England as well. So they weren't unknown. This is different. What you're dealing with at Ibrahim Osman is a young pick. And as I look, I've already maintained, I probably wouldn't select this guy. I quite fancy Jonathan Rowe myself, but I wouldn't for a moment assume that I know more about football than Tim Steidten or David Moyes or any of them. I just don't, all right? It's just the guy that I favour. I just don't want to muddy the waters with what I said previously. Would you like to be able to win money by watching football matches without actually touching the change in your own pocket? Of course you would. That's why Hammers Chat are delighted to announce a partnership and a match-up with Match Bingo, which is a brand new app, and you can download that by using the link below. Why would you choose Match Bingo? Well, I think they've actually simplified the process, quite frankly. If, like me, on a match day, you'll testify to this if you watch the build-up show, you struggle with bet builders and accumulators and actually putting it all together and it seems rather complicated, then I think Match Bingo have found the solution by choosing the best of bingo and the best of football matches. This is actually a bingo card from Match Bingo from yesterday's game, which was Aston Villa against Newcastle. Just like anyone that's ever played bingo, you fill out a card, but rather than numbers, there are things like simple match events, throw-ins, corners, cards, goals, assists, all that simple stuff. You fill it out and it allows you to win money. Now, it is a betting app, so you need to be 18 and over, but all we're asking you to do is go and check it out, download from the link below and go and play the free game, which can win you up to £175 on each and every game. You even get paid for little individual lines. If you could get 5 things across or up and down, you know how bingo works. You get £25 for 1 line, 2 lines, £50, full house, £100, that type of thing. So go and check it out, please. The link's in the description below. Then you're not going to lose a fortune, even if you do try and bet on it, because it's capped each game at £2. So you can't go and empty your whole piggy bank by doing it. We'd be absolutely thrilled if you go and check it out, download it, won't cost you a penny. Link's in the description below. Please click that, then they'll know you've come from Hammers Chat. But I do believe we should back Tim Steidten. And this is really what he's there for, to take this kid who's on his first professional contract at a club, and for him to identify right and say, this guy can be a superstar. In many respects, I think that's, I'd not say it's the only reason we would recruit a director of football, but it feels like 75% of the reason you would, right? It's a big part of the job. And for us to basically swipe his legs out from underneath him when he's trying to do his job, I don't think it's a good thing. I think it's an even more dodgy thing to do when you have Liverpool sniffing around and want him. So I think it boils down to something here. Can David Sullivan convince Tim Steidten that he has a more influential role at West Ham than he would have at Liverpool? Now, two things need to happen for that conversation to be a fruitful one. Firstly, it has to be the case. David Moyes would have to take the role of head coach rather than manager if he's to get a new deal. And Tim Steidten, firstly, would have to be given the full reins. So what you're asking for is David Sullivan to back off and David Moyes to back off. Because if rumours to be believed, it's David Sullivan who's tried to close this deal for Osman and has decided not to do it. I would find that frustrating if I'd been employed to do a job and then the boss was coming in and basically doing the job that I'd been employed to do and sort of undermining my recommendations. I think that would really irritate me, actually. And so I'm assuming it would irritate most people. So first of all, you've got to assume that he's going to back off and all those things are going to happen. The second thing is David Sullivan actually capable of convincing Tim Steidten that he's best off at West Ham? And I'm far from convinced about that. I'm far from convinced that he's going to be able to schmooze him sufficiently to do that. We're about to find out. We really are. We're about to find out. But I would be lying if I said I wasn't worried about it. I am worried about it. And I know I did my video. I uploaded this morning and said, look, it's not my intent to moan and try and find problems with West Ham. It really, really isn't. I would much prefer it if there was no links with Steidten and Liverpool, if West Ham had assigned 2 or 3 players this window and everything was looking good. And honestly, it was fine. And I think in terms of us in the sixth place, they are. But I would be burying my head in the sand and I would be sort of an element of insincerity. Why is that so hard to say? An element of insincerity were I to suggest that I wasn't worried about it and that it wasn't a big part of it. I think when you make such a drama, when you make such a fanfare of the fact that you are restructuring the club, which West Ham have done, it's all basically, look at us, we're doing everything. We've got new scouts coming in, we've got a new director of football, Mark Noble's the sporting director. It's them that have made the fuss about it. You know, there's articles on the official site. When you do that and you claim it to be important, then of course, when it looks like that's starting to fracture, then it doesn't look quite so good. I hope he stays. I really hope he does. I hope David Sullivan is capable of persuading him to stay. But to do that, he can't undermine him. So I've got to say, I'm not totally confident that come the end of the year or the season or whatever it may be, that we'll end up with Tim Steidten as our director of football.